Hey, it's Diggy. Today, I thought I would tell you the story of my favourite ever car that I owned and my worst ever car that I owned. Now, my first ever car when I passed my test, actually before I passed my test, was a Mini. And it was wonderful. It cost me £300 and I was doing my driving lessons. And every time I drove past this forecourt on the way back to going home from my driving lesson, I would see this Mini on the corner, and it was like a raised up forecourt. It was always I don't know how to describe it. We're on a hill, so it was always higher than us, and it just sat there like a shining beacon of beauty. I really fell in love with this car, so I decided I wanted it. Now, the funny thing is, I never wanted a Mini. My stepdad really was adamant that I should get a Mini as my first car. And he kept saying it over and over. Like, even before I started my driving lessons, he always used to say, your first car should be a Mini. Minis are awesome. They're fun. Everything about them is fun. And then, I didn't even like them until I saw this one Mini on this forecourt. And I was like, I really like that. It was beautiful. It was red. It had white wheels, but they were really, really small wheels. They were 10-inch wheels, right? Which, if you don't understand wheel sizes, they're tiny, right? They're like just a bit bigger than pram wheels, right? But they were also dead wide. So it looked cool as hell, this car, right? It looked amazing. And it was also a 1275 GT engine as well, which meant because of its size and its weight and the wheels and the steering wheel was a racing steering wheel, it was really quick for a Mini. I used to be able to leave traffic at the lights. It was brilliant. So I bought the car. And I got it before I passed my driving test because I was that confident I was going to pass it, to be honest. So I bought the car and I spent like weeks waiting for my test, and I would just polish it. Like every weekend I'd go out and I'd polish the car. It's not been anywhere, right? I'd just polish it. I'd clean the interior. I got a new stereo fit into it. Got a few, I changed like the knob on the gear stick. That's a gearing wheel then. That's not a thing. I changed that for like a pool ball, like you do. All of the things that you do with your first car. I got some fluffy dice for the mirror, the whole shebang. And then I passed my test. And then my driving instructor dropped me off at home. I didn't even bother going in the house to tell my family that I passed the test, which would have been my mum and my sisters and my stepdad back then. I just got straight out of his car, straight into my Mini, and went for a drive because I could. And it was great. I decided what I would do is I would drive all the places that I'm going to be driving, like normally, which were like, back then it was work, it was a few friends' houses or relatives' houses. I just decided to do all them trips, but not go into those places, but just see if I could do it, get used to the roads going that way and all that kind of stuff. And it was great. I must have been out for about an hour and a half or so. And I was driving around like a housing estate, I suppose, where one of my cousins lived at the time. I decided, right, that's it. I've done enough. I'll go back home. I'll tell them I passed. I'll tell them I've been for a drive. They've probably already realised by this point. We didn't have mobile phones back then. So nobody could text. Nobody could ring. Although actually we might have had mobile phones, but they weren't that popular. I know I had one, but I was definitely the first in my family to have one. Nobody else had one. So no one would have been able to call me anyway, I don't think, because it also cost a fortune to call a mobile phone. So, no one did it. And I'm sat at a set of traffic lights waiting to, for the lights to turn green. And somebody ran into the back of me in a Citroen Saxo. Yeah, brand new Citroen Saxo straight into the back of me. Didn't cause even the slightest mark on my Mini, but ripped the front bumper off the Citroen Saxo. Absolutely destroyed it. So I was like, well, crap. We exchanged details. She ran into me at a red light. What she didn't even run straight into me. She pulled up behind me, stopped, and then stalled the car, so it banged into the front of me, into the back of me, sorry. So it was all 100% her fault. I never even heard anything from her insurance. She never made a claim against my car or anything, so that was the last I heard of it. We exchanged details and drove away. But yeah, so I had a crash on my first day out, which was not nice. But hey, who cares, right? It wasn't my fault. I used to drive around in this thing, right? And I used to have all the windows down because it was always sunny. I would blast music because I had the best music system in this car that I could afford at the time. It probably wasn't the best, but it was good. It was like an 8-speaker system in a Mini. I could feel the vibration from the bass lifting me off the seat. It was mad. However, my taste in music back then was, well, actually, probably a lot like my taste in music now. Terrible. I used to listen to a lot of James, a lot of REM, like a few indie rock bands, things like that, which not too terrible. Like, you know, if I'm driving around blasting that out, that was very popular at the time. But I was also, for some unbeknownst reason to me, I was really into the Cause. Now, if you've not heard the Cause music, just go and have a listen. It's basically an Irish pop band. And I used to drive around in my Mini blasting that out really loud. People must go, oh, there's the guy in the Mini again playing the Cause, because I must have been notorious for it. Oh, my God. Thinking back now, that would have been ridiculous. Well, it was ridiculous. Oh, my God. Yes, we had some adventures in that car. I once drove up on the pavement in that car. I was driving home from work, and I had a couple of colleagues from work in the back of the car. I used to be a mechanic back then. So I had two of the other lads in back of car, and we're driving along. And I came to a set of roadworks that I'd never had to deal with before. And what I did, I'm trying to remember it. I turned right out of the roadworks, but the traffic from that side were coming at me, basically. It wasn't, but I remember it wasn't 3-way controlled. It was only 2-way controlled, so the joining traffic didn't have to wait for the traffic lights. But I think we were meant to creep forward and check that it was actually free, and then go. And I'd just not realised and went. And these cars are all coming at me, and the two blokes in the back went, ah! So what did I do? Up onto the pavement. Absolutely ridiculous. I drove up onto the pavement, drove round, went under a scaffold. I remember there was a scaffold attached to the pub. I went underneath this scaffold. I have no idea how I managed it. If I didn't have a Mini, I wouldn't have been able to do this. And then back onto the road on the other side. And they were all like, pull over now. So I pulled over. One of them got out and he went, get in the back. I'm driving. You absolute idiot. I was like, yep, okay, please do that. This must have been like a month after I passed my test, maybe a little bit more. I don't know, but I remember I was fresh from just passing my test, and I terrified myself. I don't think I drove again for a few days after that because I was so scared about what I'd done. Like, I was like, I should not have done that, but it was. I mean, nothing would have happened. The other cars would have stopped. I would have backed up. Would have been fine. But I full on panicked. I once got it stuck in a puddle, like literally a puddle. It was a pretty big puddle, though. Like, it was it come up to half the car's height. Driving back from Wales, we'd been on a fishing trip, me and my stepdad, and we decided to do this fishing trip in my Mini. And it was more of a give you an opportunity to take a longer trip than you normally would, you know, that kind of thing. Because I hadn't done any particularly long trips in my Mini, so I think really the whole point was to give me the opportunity to do a long trip, which was good. But on the way back, it absolutely pelted it down with rain. And the rain was so bad that it flooded part of the motorway where there was a dip. And it was night, so you couldn't see it. So I'm going along, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I could just suddenly see people in high-vis vests because my lights obviously hit them and it lit them up. And they stood in the road waving their arms. It was the police, basically. They were waving their arms, trying to let people know that there was this big, massive puddle in the middle of the road. Anyway, I hit this puddle. The car stalled because the engine had just flooded with water, and we could just hear over the megaphone, "Do not get out of the car! Stay in the car!" And of course, the first thing my stepdad did was open the door and get out of the car. And she's screaming at him, and he's going, "I'm not sitting in the road. Anybody could run into the back of us." And she's like, "That's better than being stood in the road. The car will protect you." Anyway, the police then came over and helped me out of the car, and then once they deemed it clear to cross back onto the side of the road, they moved us across to the side of the road. We then pushed the car out of the puddle because they eventually closed the road. We pushed the car out of the puddle over to the hard shoulder, and of course it wouldn't start, so we were a bit stuck there. But they called us a recovery truck, and this recovery truck came out. and he already had 2 cars on the back of his flatbed. So he said, "Well, if I can't get it running now, I can't really take you along unless you've got a tow rope." And it just so happened, being a mechanic, I had a tow rope in the back. So he said, "Oh, well, what I'll do, I'll tow you to the next service station." So like, all right, I've never been towed before, right? And basically the way towing is supposed to work is you sit in the driver's seat and, you have to keep the tension on the rope. So when he slows down, you slow down, all that kind of stuff. And we're doing that going down the motorway. We get partway down the motorway. I don't really know how it happened, but he slowed down. I slowed down like in time with him, and then he just suddenly sped up as if he'd changed his mind about slowing down. It's almost like he forgot he was towing someone, and the rope snapped. So we're then just freewheeling it down the motorway with no engine running, probably like 40, 50 mile an hour. And we're like, "Oh crap." And my stepdad goes, jam it in third. Put your clutch in, jam it in third, lift the clutch up and press down on the accelerator. And I went, "All right, third." Boom, boom. Car started, didn't it? It jump started in third because we were going so fast. So then the car starts up and he's like, "Right, let's just carry on." So we're driving down the road and I indicates and I took over the tow truck. And as we're going past the tow truck, my stepdad winds the window down. He goes, "Thanks, mate." The guy in the tow truck's just staring at us open-mouthed as if to say, "What the hell just happened?" So we just shoots off down the road. Completely forgot that there's a rope dangling from the car. So the rope's attached to the front of the car. It's gone all the way to the back. And we're just dragging this big-ass rope down the road with us. We got home and realised it was quite long. So we obviously got the rope off and everything, and then we were fine. The car was absolutely fine the day after. I had to get it cleaned because it had filled with water. So I went and got it cleaned, and the engine was absolutely fine. It was amazing, that car. It was brilliant. One of my friends once, when I worked in the garage, we had like almost like a little rivalry going on with one of the guys that worked there. And it was a completely unnecessary rivalry, really, because he basically thought I defaced his magazine. He was well into fishing, and he used to get a magazine called Carp World. And somebody cut the letters out of the word carp and rearranged them so it said Crap World. And I swear it was not me. But it is absolutely the kind of thing that I would do. So he assumed it was me. So to get revenge on me, he stuck a freaking fish in the heater of the Mini. He put it behind the heater just so under the bonnet you could basically what it would do on the Mini, it would take the heat from the engine and pump it into the cab, essentially into the interior for heat. So he stuck a dead fish. Oh my God! He stuck a dead fish in the crevice where it blows the air through, thinking that eventually I'd get stunk out by this smell of fish. But what he didn't realise is I have an absolutely abysmal sense of smell. I can never smell anything. It's got to be a really strong scent for me to be able to smell it. So weeks went past. Apparently it was in there for 6 weeks before he gave up. And I hadn't smelt it, and I hadn't had anybody else in the car, or if I had, nobody had mentioned this fishy smell. They probably just all assumed it was me and didn't want to say anything. Oh my God. So one day he looked at me and he went, "Yeah, I'm sick of this. I'm just going to have to show you." So why? He went, "Come with me." And he goes over and he lifts the bonnet on my car and he went, "Look." He pulls this fish out. This fish is rotted. It's disgusting. Now I can smell it. Now I can see it. I can smell it. And he threw it in the bin. And he went, "That's been there for about 6 weeks now, and you've not said anything." It was a good car. I really like that car. But eventually I had to get rid of it because there were changes made to fuel. So, for those of you that don't know, like now you can buy unleaded petrol and you can buy diesel and you can buy different grades of these things. We also used to have a fuel called 4-star. Which was a petrol that had lead in it. That's why unleaded is called unleaded. And it basically became illegal to sell. So any car that for any car that required 4-star fuel couldn't use unleaded fuel, not without some modifications. And the modifications required for my car to be able to handle it were not unsurmountable. Like, I would have spent the money on it. I knew somebody who could do the work as well. It wasn't the kind of work I would have done. And it was doable, but it would have cost about £500. Which I was willing to spend on that car. However, it was also starting to rot a little bit. And again, they were the A panels on a Mini. They were the panels that are known to rot. And they're replaceable as well, so I could have got them replaced, but then that would have started costing more money. I wasn't 100% sure I could really afford to spend that kind of money on it. And at the time, an offer came up where somebody offered to essentially swap my Mini for a Volkswagen Golf. And being like, what would I have been, 19, 20? A Volkswagen Golf sounds pretty appealing. And it's a bit of an upgrade. It was a 5-door. It was a much bigger car. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll do that swap. The reason why he wanted to do the swap was because he wanted the engine out of my car to put in his Mini, because he had a perfectly good body Mini, but he wanted the engine, because my engine was quite a rare engine, actually. There wasn't that many of them built with it. So he wanted the engine. So I was like, yeah, okay, we'll do the swap. The car was fine, I'd looked over it and I trusted the guy and everything. But sadly, this is the story of my worst car. Yes, that Volkswagen Golf. It was unbelievably bad, ridiculously bad, to the point where it was fine for about a week. Now, I don't know whether the person who I swapped it with knew that it had all these problems or not. I'll be honest, I don't think they did, because they were very apologetic about it, and it was too late. They were like, you know what, I'd swap back, but it was too late. They'd already crushed my Mini and taken the engine out of it, because he went to the scrapyard. So what was wrong with this Volkswagen Golf? Well, first of all, it was old. Like, you could tell it was old. It didn't seem that way when I first got it, but after a few weeks of using it, you could tell, like, everything squeaked, that kind of stuff. But the worst thing about it was, every single week I got a puncture, which isn't the end of the world. I mean, I worked in a garage. I could fix these punctures myself. Not a problem. But it's annoying having to fix a puncture on your car nearly every week. No idea why it suddenly started getting them. I don't know if somebody was popping my tyres or what. Who knows? But the worst thing about it, the absolute worst thing about it, is that randomly it would decide that it didn't want to go into reverse gear. And it turned out, when I looked into it, this was actually quite a common problem on this model of Volkswagen Golf. There was a linkage that linked the gear stick to the gearbox, and it was like a little U shape with a ball joint on it, basically. It was well known for failing, to the point where they actually had a quality program where you could take it in and they would fix it for free. And they would do this on mine. And it was that old, and they would still do it on mine. That's how bad of a known problem it was. However, I had some weird issues with the interior. I can't really remember what they were, but it was like certain parts of the interior couldn't be removed because the screws had gone rusty or something like that. So I would have had to have paid to get all that fixed before they could do the thing that was required, because they needed to remove like the seats and stuff like that to be able to get to it. It just wasn't feasible. Then there was a way of doing it without doing all that, but it's not the official way of doing it, so they wouldn't do it. So I could never get that done. And I just ended up with a car that randomly I could be in the middle of somewhere and it just wouldn't go in reverse. It would reverse absolutely fine for weeks before it, and then the time I need it to really go into reverse, it just wouldn't. There was no making it. There was nothing you could do to do it. Basically, the U on the bottom and on that ball joint had spun round and gone the opposite way. And then eventually, over the natural course of driving, it would flip itself back. And that's why it wasn't always a problem. However, the worst part of owning this car was, one day I was driving along and I was on one of those 50-mile-an-hour roads. So I wasn't going really fast, but 50 mile an hour is pretty fast. I went to change gear, and the gear linkage that had been giving me the problem all along decided, nah, I'm done, mate. And it fell off, which meant the gear stick fell straight through my car, hit the floor underneath, and started dragging along the road. And it gouged a hell of a crevice into the main road. And I really struggled to pull off because it was pulling against the car, and it started cutting into the interior of the car. So I managed to get it off the road, but boy, was it bad. It basically dug a gouge in the tarmac down the side of the road, and it was there for years after this gouge. And I was like, oh crap, I caused that. Like, it was one of those things you could see it if you knew it was there. Well, you could see it. It was obvious it was there, but you didn't know what it was until I was in the car with you, and I went, I did that. But that car had to go after that point because the gear stick had literally fallen through the car and into the middle of the road. It bent all around the the exterior of the car. Oh my god, it was awful. It was really bad. There were sparks coming up and everything. Ah, yeah. So that's my best car that I ever had, which was my first car, and the worst car that I ever had, which was my second car. Yeah, don't buy a Volkswagen Golf. Actually, that's not true. Volkswagen Golfs are good cars. Just that particular one that I had was very old and very bad.